Where would we be without biodiversity? Probably extinct. Without biodiversity, the entire support system for all living things would completely collapse. That's why we must do all we can to protect it. Welcome to Echo Africa. I am Chris Ilems.
Well, Chris, your point is well taken. There is still a lot we can do to improve the situation. Now, that is something we'll be looking into on today's program. Welcome and thank you for joining us. I am Sandra Twinodium, and here is what else we have coming up. How plastic trash is helping people get healthcare in Nigeria. How hungry earthworms are ensuring healthy crops. And how a water management program is tackling the effects of drought in Rwanda. We start the show right here in Uganda, which is home to an abundance of wildlife, from chameleons and vultures to cheetahs and, of course, our famous mountain gorillas. But the well-being of many of these animal populations depends on the tireless efforts of people who have dedicated their lives to protecting them, like the Uganda Wildlife Authority's head of law enforcement.
Margaret Kasumba knows how crucial motivation is for her and her team of rangers working for the Uganda Wildlife Authority. This is a rare moment of relaxation. They frequently put their lives on the line in order to protect their country's wildlife. Margaret Kasumba is at the vanguard of the fight against poachers in Uganda's national parks. Her job is a highly dangerous one.
Sometimes we are confronted with people who are equally armed like us, like the poachers. We have armed poaching. Sometimes people come in armed to get the animals that they want. So we have also to be armed and ready to counter what they come to do.
Uganda's elephant population is now back up to over 5,000 animals, thanks to the rangers' tireless efforts and dedication. But the fight is not over. In 2019, the authority seized a record amount of ivory, weighing in at a total of over 3 tons of tusks, a haul that cost the lives of over 350 elephants at the hands of poachers.
On average, every year, we prosecute about 400 suspects involved in different offenses, including wildlife trafficking, poaching, illegal entry into the park, and others.
The rangers have to keep pressure on poachers by maintaining armed patrols across the national parks. Uganda has an ambitious goal to reintroduce a herd of white rhinos to the wild, 40 years after poachers wiped them out. The Ziwa Sanctuary in central Uganda is the proud home of the only wild southern white rhinos in the country. The 33 animals are guarded by rangers around the clock.
We have increased our force in numbers, and we're still increasing. We have people who are training right now, military training. They will be passing out soon. They will come to reinforce the already existing ranger force to protect the resources. We have also improved on our detection mechanisms. Our investigations unit has acquired equipment to detect wildlife crime and intelligence. They can now detect and prevent.
It's also vital, she says, that the poachers are caught and convicted. In 2019, the government drastically increased the penalties for poaching or trading protected animals.
This particular law has given us breathing space. At least as they commit offenses, the criminals know what is coming for them if we happen to get them.
Uganda now has a special court dedicated to cases involving poachers and illegal trafficking of protected animals and animal products. And the punishments are severe. Just recently, an ivory trader was given a life sentence.
For me, that is a big achievement, because all of us as a chain contributed to that. We have a court which was designated to handle wildlife-related cases. That's a very big achievement for me. Previously, we used it to grapple, competing with other cases in court, other very important cases of murder, treason, whatever. You can imagine a treason case competing with a wildlife case. Which one would be given priority to be heard?
Margaret Kasumba says that she and her colleagues from the Wildlife Authority are now being listened to. And both the politicians and the courts know that their commitment to their country's wildlife has benefits for the entire country. Recent years have seen the elephant population gradually recovering. At the same time, there's also been a slight increase in the number of endangered mountain gorillas. Margaret Kasumba is now looking forward to the endangered white rhino, soon also reappearing where it belongs, back in the wild.
From one strong woman to the next, from Margaret Kasumba to Elizabeth Mrema. Born in Tanzania, she is the Executive Secretary of the UN Convention on Biological Diversity and has repeatedly pointed out the impact of biodiversity laws on economies and societies. Over 50% of global economic output depends on intact ecosystems. Eco Africa sat down with her recently.
Biodiversity is just to see what is around us, in the sense that biodiversity is the foundation of life. It's foundation because our life is dependent on biodiversity. We depend on biodiversity for the food we eat, the water we drink, the sequestration of carbon.
But this foundation is under threat, says Elizabeth Mrema. She's hoping for a Paris moment for the protection of biodiversity, a reference to the global climate goals agreed in Paris in 2015. By the end of the century, around 1 million species could be extinct.
The loss of biodiversity has reached an unprecedented level in the history of humankind. 75% of the land globally is degraded. 66% of the marine environment is degraded. 85% of wetlands degraded or disappeared. 50% of coral reefs have disappeared. And all this degradation, pollution, here not even mentioning the plastic, how we choke the ocean with plastics, is all as the result of human actions.
The effects of climate change can now be seen in floods, drought, forest fires, and heat waves. Disasters that Mrema says are the main driver of biodiversity loss.
For many years, the world had focused on climate change and focused on climate change completely independent from the loss of biodiversity. But now, or in the recent years, the world has realized that you cannot deal with climate change without looking at loss of biodiversity.
Around 50% of global GDP is dependent on nature. So if we don't protect biodiversity, we're putting our own livelihoods and lives at risk.
Recent reports have indicated that 75% of all emerging infectious diseases in humans are zoonotic in nature. Zoonotic in the sense that they are closely connected or linked with the health of the ecosystem. 97% of the loss of biodiversity is caused by human beings, our actions. And if COVID-19 has not taught us a lesson, because we are also species, if we are not careful, we will have all perished with the COVID.
Mrema says she's frustrated to see how ecosystems have been destroyed during years of inaction and slow decision-making.
And we need to act now, not tomorrow. If it's tomorrow, the tipping points will have reached. We are already late, so it is now and today.
It's really shocking to see how much biodiversity can be lost in just a few decades or even years. The fact is, almost all of us play some part in that, either directly or indirectly, whether we are aware of it or not.
That's right, Sandra. In France, for example, a once common fish is disappearing due to human activities. Now it's getting help from a local business keen to help preserve the region's fragile ecosystems.
Across France, it was a summer of unprecedented drought. Weeks with no rain, and in many places, massive forest fires. Animals suffered too, as streams and ponds dried up. That's having long-term consequences for the country's waterways. In the Gex region, fishermen are concerned about the state of their local trout stocks, so they've launched a program to breed trout in secure pools, where there's always enough fresh water and nets to protect the fish from predators. When the trout reach a certain size, they're transferred to streams that have enough water all year round. The fish can follow their usual migration patterns and hopefully breed in the wild.
If all the ideal conditions were fulfilled for the fish to reproduce naturally in the river, we'd be delighted, and we'd be the first to let nature have its way.
This year, they're releasing a ton of trout into the wild, but everyone here hopes that one day the breeding program will no longer be necessary.
And how about you? If you're also doing your bit, tell us about it. Visit our website or send us a tweet. #DoingYourBit. We share your stories.
Our next report also comes from Europe, this time Germany. But it also concerns the unintended side effect of upsetting the balance of naturally occurring processes. Earthworms, which are found almost everywhere in the world, are integral to agriculture and therefore essential to our survival. A school in Berlin is making sure its students understand the importance of this humble and often overlooked creature.
A special lesson is getting underway at this Berlin primary school, and it's one where spades come in handy. This class are learning about an animal most of us rarely see, but which is critical for our survival. Wriggly and slimy, earthworms aren't the type of animals humans typically enjoy getting close to. But these children know it's worth taking a closer look.
At first I thought they're probably really boring and stupid. They're probably like a snail, really slow. But now I find them really cool. I find them really funny because, for example, when they're on your hand, some move really quickly and others slowly.
Earthworms are industrious invertebrates. They play a key role in many of the mostly unseen processes that go on in the ground beneath our feet. In places where they're a native species, like Europe, they're vital for soil and plant health.
The earthworms aerate our soil and make our plants stronger.
Without them, birds wouldn't have anything to eat.
Class teacher Paula Risser has handed out a worksheet about the nutrient cycle. It explains how earthworms eat up dead plants and animals and convert them into feces called casts, which are rich in the nutrients that plants need to thrive. Risser hopes her pupils will learn to appreciate the tiny creatures.
In my opinion, they should understand the bigger picture, that everything is interconnected. And if I behave well here and am mindful and respectful towards all living beings and plants, then of course I also have a much better, more livable environment.
At this research facility near the German city of Halle, scientists are studying the damage done by modern-day intensive farming practices. Over a sprawling area, they're looking at how soil life fares when land is managed in other ways, both in today's climate and the predicted warmer world of the future.
This cropland creates very unfavorable conditions for earthworms because it's fertilized regularly, which is what earthworms don't like. They have very delicate skin, and if the fertilization lowers the pH value of the soil, it gets more acidic. And also it's a monoculture, right? So there's just one type of plant that they eat. And it creates a very, very static environment.
Ecologist Marie Zunnemann is taking a soil sample to check for life. The ongoing drought in the region has pushed down earthworm numbers across all land use types.
By now, we haven't found very many. Here's one very, very small one that we found for now.
In recent years, the intensively farmed plots have been all but earthworm-free. That's a bad sign because their presence is widely seen as an indicator of soil fertility. In grassland plots like this pasture that's grazed twice a year by sheep, as well as organically farmed plots, earthworm numbers are higher.
So meadows that entail a high diversity, that have many different grasses, many different herbs, different legumes.
Back at the school garden, the children are putting into practice exactly that. Looking after the soil means looking after the earthworms and the rest of the soil organisms that turn seeds into sustenance.
Almost everything can be recycled when we put our minds to it. But creating incentives for getting everyone to participate is important if we hope to see real progress. Well, right here in Nigeria, a program has been set up that encourages people to recycle in exchange for something that's often unaffordable for many: medical care.
At last, Jerome Guto can share his concerns with the doctor. For a long time now, he's been suffering from abdominal pain. Now, the long-awaited consultation is finally happening. Like many poorer Nigerians, he can't really afford to see a doctor. He's never had health insurance because it was too expensive for him. He then heard of a way that he could still get insurance without paying anything, thanks to a startup called SosoCare.
I now come with Kobo. It's the old battery, the old motor battery, and the plastic waste that I donated to them, and they give me the money to come here and do the checkup. And you can see they give me the drugs. So I'm very happy for them.
SosoCare has been around since the end of 2019. It was founded by Nonso Oporum. He was troubled by the widespread plastic pollution in Nigeria and was also looking for a way of giving people access to medical care. Just 3% of Nigerians have health insurance.
So we thought of how can we use one problem, which is plastic that pollute the environment, to solve another problem, which is access to quality healthcare. Then we created SosoCare as a way for millions of people to finance their healthcare, whether they have cash or they don't have cash. That way they can bring in recyclables.
The system is pretty straightforward. People with no money collect recyclable waste. 5 kilograms of plastic can earn you health insurance for a month. 1 car battery will get you a year's cover. And what has gotten around about the scheme?
When they introduced themselves to me, I picked interest. I started telling some friends. And I pick in the hotel, at times in the park, or along the street to make the street clean. I have other ladies who brought, and as they brought, I measured, I paid them also. They take them to hospital. Me, I've taken my card, but I've not been to hospital.
The collected waste is sold to recycling companies. That's how SosoCare finances the insurance. The company has around 7,500 customers, but in the next 5 years, Nonso Oporum wants to offer insurance to around 100 million people, half of the country's population.
One thing we want to do is to change public behavior around recycling, as well as public behavior around building trust on insurance products.
In any case, Jerome Guto is happy that he now has a health insurance. The examination revealed that he has gastritis. Now, he can even afford the medication.
What a terrific program. It can't be said often enough. Without recycling or reusing what we already have and learning how to use our limited resources more efficiently will make our problems worse.
So true, Chris. Just consider water, which is essential to all life. But across Africa, the rains have become unpredictable. They may come as heavy downpours, too late or not at all. Up to 90% of households in southern Rwanda are affected by drought, pushing the government to take action.
It's been a long time since the reservoir at Gakoma had enough water. This community, just over 100 kilometers south of Rwanda capital Kigali, is desperate for rain. It's a major operation for people here to access enough water for themselves and their livestock. And the precious little that's available is not clean.
It's difficult to find water in this area. This water from the marsh is like gold for my animals, even though it's too dirty. The other farmers take their animals 15 kilometers from here to drink.
Rwanda has been hard hit by climate change. While repeated heavy rainfalls in some parts is causing erosion, the south and east of the country are suffering from drought. In Kigali, there is growing concern about the situation.
The effects of climate change towards that is that prolonged droughts, prolonged dry spells, dries up the rivers, dries up the wells, dries up the springs that were there. And that one becomes a huge challenge.
In an effort to provide clean drinking water during the frequent dry spells, the government has launched a comprehensive program to dig new boreholes. The UN's International Fund for Agricultural Development is pouring around $18 million into the project. It's a huge undertaking. Depending on whether you have a clay-based soil or rock, it can take a long time to heat groundwater. So the engineers drill a test well every 100 meters to sound out the conditions. A team of experts examines the soil here in Kageyo, in eastern Rwanda. They need to decide on the right place for a borehole. Not everywhere has water available.
This region, it is difficult because the water table of this area is very low. Right now we are drilling, we are on 150 meters deep there. So the water table, most of the places here, it is in deeper than 100 meters. So it is not easy to reach on that water, but it's very possible.
This time, the team is lucky and finds groundwater. Local residents know sooner their worries about water will be over. Once the borehole is ready, it will serve up to 500 families and save them a lot of time. Often we leave our houses at midnight to fetch water and walk for more than 2 hours to get there. So you can understand how precious water is to us. I'm happy we have water nearby. We'll be able to drink whenever we want and wash ourselves. I thank God. Back to Gakoma, south of the capital. Here, a new borehole is ready in use. Solar panels power the pump, saving money and easing the burden on the environment. When a new borehole is dug, residents receive instructions on how to maintain it, as well as tips on saving water. Groundwater reserves are not endless. Rwanda population is growing, and the dry season are getting longer. More boreholes mean more ground power will be used, as Samuel Ishaka explains. He heads up nearly formed water saving club in Gakoma.
We must protect this site. How? Firstly, everyone is responsible for protecting it. We should protect it as we would protect our own eyes. Secondly, we have to know how to use the water without wasting it. It's free, and we should always use it efficiently to preserve what's left in the ground.
Fresh water is now available both for the people and their livestock. In the past, many animals died because of drought or from drinking the polluted water in pools and streams.
There's a remarkable change in the health of our animals. They can drink the water at any time, and they put on weight, which is really nice.
The UN says only 57% of Rwanda's rural population has access to a water supply that's within 30 minutes of their home. A number of new boreholes are now planned. But there will need to be a lot more if all residents and their livestock are to gain easier access to clean water.
What's the situation like where you live? Are there effective recycling programs? Is water being used efficiently? Right, tell us about it. We look forward to receiving your comments. I'm Chris Alem signing off from Ogun State, Nigeria.
Bye for now, Chris. See you next week, and that goes for you, our viewers, too. In the meantime, don't forget to check in with us on all our social media platforms. It's been nice to have you with us today. I am Sandra Twinobio saying goodbye from Kampala here in Uganda. See you next week.